Hey friend, it's Dave. Just wanted to let you know that you're about to listen to the first of 2 episodes dedicated to celebrating Constant Contact's 30th anniversary. In these episodes, we're going to cover a bit of history. We'll talk about what's the same in small business marketing, what's changed, and what's in store for the future. Today, you'll hear from Constant Contact's first CEO, Gail Goodman. And in the next episode, you'll hear from Constant Contact's current CEO, Frank Vella. 2 leaders focused on providing small businesses with the tools and resources they need to compete against their larger competitors. I can't wait for you to hear these episodes, friend. And as always, thanks for being here. Enjoy the episode. On today's episode, you'll hear from someone who helped shape the early days of email marketing and built a business by staying obsessively close to her customers. Plus, what it really takes to build something that lasts. This is the Be a Marketer podcast. Marketer. My name is Dave Charest, Director of Small Business Success at Constant Contact, and I help small business owners like you make sense of online marketing. And on this podcast, we'll explore what it really takes to market your business, even if marketing's not your thing. No jargon, no hype, just real stories to inspire you and practical advice you can act on. So remember, friend, you can be a marketer, and at Constant Contact, we're here to help. Well, hello, friend, and thanks for joining us for another episode of the Be a Marketer podcast. That's right. I said us because guess who's here? The person always keeping me honest, the one and only, Kelsey Carter joins me again. Hi, Kelsey.
Hi, Dave. How are you?
Good. You're very bubbly today. I like it.
I'm very excited to be here.
I love it. I love it. There's a good reason for excitement, I think. We have a special episode today, something we've been excited about kind of getting on the books. One, not only because of the guest that we're talking to, but because can you believe that here we are in the year 2025, and since January, we have been celebrating 30 years of Constant Contact.
30 years.
Wow.
Older than me.
Well, okay. Well, there you go. That puts some things into perspective, right? Isn't that wild? Can you imagine?
That is crazy to think that the company I work for is older than myself.
Pretty amazing when you start to think about just how crazy that is, especially when you start to think about just the lifespan. If you think of, let's say, small businesses, right? I think we're somewhere in the ballpark of like 8.5 years, let's say, is the average lifespan. So when you think about just among large corporations, you think the average tenure in the S&P 500, for example, has decreased dramatically from, 67 years, and this is in like the 1920s, to just 15 years is where we are today. It makes you think a bit, doesn't it? Right? It's wild.
Yeah, definitely. Because what really does it take for a business to not just survive, but actually thrive for 3 decades? Is it about resilience, adaptability, strong connections to customers? Or honestly, it's probably a combination of all of them.
Yeah, well, I was going to say, right? Like, how do all these elements really play into just even when you think about how we approach marketing today, right? So much has changed and there's so many elements that do come into play with that. And so, as we try to explore some of the answers to these questions and particularly into, how this has impacted Constant Contact over the years, we decided to go to the source. So what can you tell us about our guest today, Kelsey?
Today's guest is a good one. It is Gail Goodman, the former CEO of Constant Contact and current mentor, board member, and chair of Entrepreneurship for All, a nonprofit dedicated to helping underrepresented entrepreneurs grow their businesses. So Gail has done it all, from working with hardware at IBM to consulting at Bain & Company to leading the way in software as a service and small business marketing. For years, she's helped small businesses succeed, and her love for mission-driven work and building strong teams has really made a big impact in the industry.
Yeah, really big impact. Just, I think of myself alone just having worked with her, and it was really great to reconnect with Gail. I remember, I don't know if I've told you this story or not, but one of the first big projects that I worked on was helping Gail write her book, Engagement Marketing, How Small Businesses Win in a Socially Connected World, as a developmental editor. Really cool to kind of work on it. And it was during my first year at Constant Contact. So we're talking back in 2011 to 2012 timeframe here. And again, I started as a content developer at that point. And, as someone who really had no formal marketing experience, really, other than what I was learning from, just learning on my own and doing some of my own stuff, it was really a bit of a trip to be commenting on kind of draft copies of things and then seeing comments from Gail saying, I agree with Dave. Right. That's why I was like, wow. Right. Like that was really cool. So I love Gail, and I'm forever grateful for the opportunity to work with her and, build a 13 plus year career at this point, as I'm sure right? I wake up every day really excited to do the work that we get to do, the fantastic people that we get to do it with, and the amazingly resilient people we get to do it for. I've learned a lot from Gail over the years, and well, here's what you're going to learn, dear listener, by hearing some of this conversation here today. Gail talks about how to build a business that truly lasts, right? She really breaks down the power of something that, we're still talking about 30 years later, but really the power of focusing on repeat business and word of mouth, and why most businesses actually overlook their best source of revenue. We talk about why resilience is the real secret to growth. You're going to hear how really to push through plateaus, adapt to market changes, and really just keep moving even when the odds aren't in your favor. And then the art of staying close to your customer. Really, you've got to discover the practical ways to stay relevant by continually understanding and adapting to the changing needs of your customer, even as your business scales. So, Kelsey, are you ready? We ready to go to this conversation?
I'm so ready. Ready
Excellent.
as I'll ever be.
Oh, good. Perfect. Well, let's go to Gail as she explains the journey to her love affair with small businesses.
One of the very unique opportunities I got at IBM was to work directly with customers. It really made me curious about their objectives. What were they doing with our systems? Why was that important? And it just made me realize how little perspective I had on the business world. And so I went to get an MBA to figure all that out. I laugh because I literally went into business school not knowing that revenue minus expense equals profit. It's not a complicated concept, but
Sure.
I just I'd been technical, heads down, very focused. And so for me, those 2 years were like, open up the world to me.
Oh, wow.
And really powerful, influencing kind of where I went from there.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you spent some time at Bain and Company, correct? Like after that, like doing consulting and those types of things. Like what stuck with you from that experience, and even that you kind of took into yourself as your future, like being a leader and that type of thing?
Bain was a wonderful, I'll call it MBA finishing school, because you got to look at a lot of different business models and see how different companies thought about their industry and their customer in their business. And the things I really learned at Bain was about how to analyze and understand markets. Who's the customer? What's the problem you're trying to solve for them? And how do you make money solving that? And how do you do that in the context of the other players? So Bain had some real fundamental research. It's not confidential. It's been well published about how, the number 1 and 2 player in an industry get differentially better profit margins. And so you don't want to be the 5th or 6th player. You want to be a 1 or 2, and you want to try to create markets and own the market. And that definitely stuck with me and influenced me through the constant contact journey.
Yeah, so it's interesting, right? Because you're picking up a lot of different experiences along the way. I mean, you've had product roles, you had marketing roles before coming into constant contact. So were there anything else coming out of all of those other lessons you're learning along the way?
Well, I definitely, when I left Bain, I ended up in the software industry, and I definitely ended up on the product side of the house, right? As a product, first a partner manager, then a product manager, then a head of marketing, then a general manager, and then ultimately constant contact with I was a first-time CEO.
Yeah.
So there were lots of things I didn't know about how to do that job. we can go there. But I think what I kept from all of it was to stay close to your customer. If you really understand the problem you're solving for your customer, and you stay focused on what they need to successfully use your product, we used to say in the mainframe days, it's so antiquated, it's not about the sell, it's about the install, right? It's not about getting them to say yes, it's getting them to use and love. And that is what, my experience in Constant Contact was all about. Because once you get into a monthly subscription service, if they don't love it and use it, they leave. That really permeated to stay close to the customer, understand how they're using your service, understand their value, make sure they understand the value they're getting. That kind of really permeated everything.
Yeah. It's funny you say that. I mean, I think oftentimes when we're talking to folks, right, and just thinking about beyond the marketing piece is that don't forget to continue to communicate after they buy, right? Because to your point, yeah, you got to get them, the more they feel good about that decision to purchase and then using it and getting value, that's going to help you in the long run, right? I'm curious as to, and this might have been the inciting moment to kind of lead you down this path that you went on, but you were part of a business called Open Market, which was kind of a bit of a wild ride in the early internet days of stuff, right? So I guess tell us maybe a little bit about that and then what that experience taught you and then how it really maybe led you to wanting to build something from scratch.
It helps for your listeners to put a time frame on it. So
Yeah.
the year is 1996.
Okay.
And browsers have just come out.
It's so
Right,
wild.
we're not carrying cell phones yet.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we're getting to the internet through dial-up. Like that little but everybody can see how it's going to change the world.
Yeah.
And so I joined a company in Boston called Open Market, which was really trying to create the initial platform for commerce on the internet. In fact, we had the patent for secure credit card transactions over the internet. Absorb that for a minute. But it was just early. Like all the other pieces weren't there yet. Today I sit on the board of Shopify, who is doing what Open Market had hoped to do, but it, took 20 years for the internet and all of the capability, and bandwidth and all of that to get to the point where a shopping experience was truly delightful. It just takes a long time for markets to develop. But one of the things we did at Open Market in a partnership with AT&T, was called Secure Buy. And it was a small business build a store platform. And I was one of the product managers, and I spent a bunch of time talking to small businesses. And that is the start of my love affair with small business. And so I really credit Open Market with that amongst all things. But it also made me hyper aware of, there's what you want to do, and then there's the art of the possible from the technology world, right? And there have been leaps and changes in that. Again, when we started Constant Contact, a graphical user interface didn't exist in a browser. Right now, you drag and drop stuff in your email newsletter. Originally, it was like forms based. Because the art of the possible didn't include a what you see is what you get interface. We couldn't do live HTML on a screen and show you what it was going to look like. You had to put stuff in and then hit preview and go to a different window. And anyway, the art of the possible evolves. And I think we're going to talk later about what's happening next. We're about to do just another giant leapfrog on the art of the possible with AI.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we're going to get to that stuff, which I think
I'll
is
leave that aside.
Yeah. So amazing stuff there because, I think that we're coming up on like a huge just change. I agree with you 100% there. But when you think about, I guess, coming from that, you start to build this love affair with small business. And I mean, even just the timing of that, when you start thinking about, okay, the timing was probably off on what you were trying to do with Open Market. But now, okay, you want to transition to, starting something from and building something. Talk to me about, I guess, the timing there and how did the opportunity with what would have been at that time, I guess, roving software, right? Like, how did that come up?
I was out looking for a new startup. Things had gotten challenging at Open Market, and I was ready for something new. And I got introduced to Randy Parker, who had the original idea for Constant Contact. It was then called Roving Software. And it was like the first conversation with Randy. I was like, oh, we are seeing eye to eye on how the internet is going to change the world for small business. And we began a series of conversations, and eventually I joined the company as CEO. And our very first deck had, this picture of a dog in front of a computer screen. I don't know if you remember this cartoon. There was a cartoon that said, on the internet, nobody knows you're a dog.
Okay, yeah.
But under it, we put, on the internet, nobody knows you're a small business.
Mm.
And our first tagline was big E marketing for small E business. And the idea was we saw the potential for the internet to let small businesses look so much bigger, right? To get beyond the constraints of their physical location and reach customers anywhere and have an experience with those customers that was just as good, if not better, because of its intimacy than the big companies were going to be able to do. And that was like the guiding vision of roving software that we then kind of renamed to match the product Constant Contact.
How did you even end up meeting Randy?
We were introduced through a venture capitalist.
I mean, so you guys hit it off, of course, that sounds right, but you were kind of pre-product, pre-revenue, pre-funding, all of that pre-stuff was going on. So what was it that really made you say, yes, this is what I'm going to do?
So knowing me, this will not surprise you, but I met Randy and the small team, Alex Stern, Michelle Keegan, Margaret Olson. And like the next week, they were going to a conference. And I said, oh, can I go to the conference and just like stand in the booth and listen to customers? And in classic Gail fashion, I go to the conference, I am like standing behind them. And in like, I don't know, maybe 3 minutes, I'm like pushing through pitching directly. And I am seeing how like compelling what we were thinking about, how much it was resonating with the audience. And so it was really just conviction that what we were doing was badly needed. And that we had, believe it or not, at that point, there was nobody doing it, that we had, empty space to work in.
Okay, so there's nobody doing it.
That will change dramatically over time.
Of course, right? but I think that's one of the interesting things. I mean, and you still even see this today. And I guess so my question to you is that everyone seems to be, chasing the enterprise market, for example, right? Because there's more money there and there all of this type of stuff. So I guess why this focus on small business, or maybe that is the reason why, I don't know, you tell me, but like why the focus on small business when everybody else is trying to focus on enterprise?
It was just what we were drawn to. It was the people we wanted to help. So I'll tell you, I have loved working with small and medium business, small and medium nonprofits for a variety of reasons. One is they're just generally mission driven and really nice people. Two, they are so grateful when you help them. They just truly are sincerely appreciative. And what we saw, and I think it's still true, is that they usually get the short end of the stick from most vendors, right? You go to a bank, they've got a great consumer business, they've got a great enterprise business, and the small businesses are kind of lost in the middle. We'd say the same is true for internet providers and other folks. Like normally they get horrible service. And so we truly believed they were worthy of, deserved, and we could create a business model where we put them first. It just spoke to us. It was just our passion. I mean, trust me, the board wanted us to go up market like 100 times. And that just wasn't what we built the company for. It doesn't mean up market wasn't a good market. It just wasn't our market. We knew who our people were, and we knew who we wanted to work with.
I have to say, I mean, I'm over my 13th year now at Constant Contact, and, and it was my first big corporate job, that whole thing, right? And like, that's one of the things that to this day still sticks with me is that the people in the company, how focused and passionate everyone is about helping small businesses. And we'll probably talk a little bit more about that too, just in terms of like building the company and things like that. But just so people get a sense of this too, I mean, I don't think Constant Contact didn't necessarily start as a software as a service product either, did it?
No, but we pivoted there pretty fast.
Really quickly.
So,
Yeah.
I joined in April of 99. And by October of 2000, we were SaaS. So we pivoted there pretty fast. Again, it was just how the market was evolving and the art of the possible. And yeah, we went there pretty fast.
Yeah. Yeah. So we obviously talked about the focus on small business and then even just the business model itself. I mean, when you were doing this, I mean, a lot of people thought it wouldn't work.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, the biggest challenge with the market, and it's still a challenge I'm sure you live with every day, is that you can't spend a lot of sales and marketing dollars reaching a customer who's going to pay you $30 a month. You can't put a sales force out on the street that costs thousands and thousands of dollars, right? You have to find a super efficient set of channels to market that make your math work. Now, for in the SaaS world, we talk about the cost to acquire a customer. Sometimes hear that abbreviated as CAC, cost of acquisition, and then the lifetime value of the customer. And it's just the simple math, right? You can't, if you lose money on a customer, you can't make it up with volume. You have you have to have a profitable model. And that was I think the most challenging thing about building this business is figuring out that the sales and marketing funnel that yielded a profitable business.
Well, so then to talk us through, like, what were some of the things that, you did, I guess, in those early days to get the word out? And was there anything maybe scrappy or creative that actually you found really worked?
Well, I laughingly say, like, our first 20 customers were people we sat next to in planes, trains, and automobiles.
Yeah.
Right. So, we just kept telling the story. We kept talking to people. And again, context is so interesting, right? At this time, our biggest objection from people was, I don't have an email address and I don't think my customers do either. It's so hard to imagine now.
It really is, right?
Right. And then we went through the email is dead phase, and turns out we all still have email and we all still check it every day.
Yep.
We're still good. But, it was really learning how to tell the story more succinctly. Because if it took you 20 minutes sitting next to somebody and you got to yes, that's great, but you can't do that and charge $30. And so for us, it was a lot about learning where and how to tell the story. So we used partners a lot, people who already had large bases of small business. We did partnerships with Intuit. We did partnerships with AOL. We did partnerships with Yahoo Small Business. We did partnerships with American Express Small Business. So, actually our best partnerships at the time were the domain name registrars, register.com and Network Solutions, businesses that don't really even exist anymore. And we went to them and through them to their customers because they already had a customer base they could reach in some effective way. And then we piggybacked on their reach to get to their customers. Then as we got bigger, we started to be able to use more traditional channels like pay-per-click advertising and other things. And then when we really got to some scale, we were able to use mass media and other things because we understood our economics and how to make our economics work.
Talk to me a little bit about, one of the things that has always attracted me about Constant Contact was like the education piece, right? The idea of really being involved and helping people and teaching people. And I come from a content background where, that's what content marketing is, right? You're using education, I think it's shifted a bit now, and I would even argue that, content marketing is marketing these days. But talk to me just about was there like a light bulb moment with we need to be out locally reaching these people where they are and teaching them what they need to know to even get to the point where they're saying, yeah, I want to do that.
Yeah. So there were a lot of data points that came together, but I would say the biggest aha, and I just don't think it went off like a light bulb. It was like,
right.
It kind of took a long time to penetrate.
Then you'd be like, oh, duh.
Our thick skulls. Was that we really had two problems. We had to convince people to use email marketing. But before that, we had to convince people that taking the time to market to people who already knew you versus new customer acquisition. I'm going to spend a minute on this because I think it's still something that many small businesses don't understand. And I like to use, you've seen me do the circle, but I like to use the 80-20 rule, right?
Sure.
When I talk to a small business and I say, how much of your business is repeat business? They always say something like 90-10 or 80-20. And I'm like, so 80% is repeat business. And then I say, so what do you do to get that? And this like, what are you talking about? Look, crosses their face. What do you mean?
Yeah.
They just come back. And what we understood deeply was that, sure, some will come back, but if you remind people, they'll come back more frequently. And I used to do a pitch to small businesses, and I would say, just right now, think of a restaurant you love that you haven't been to in over a year. Every one of us can do it. And then you say, why haven't you been there? And it's usually kind of an out of sight, out of mind problem. I just hadn't really thought about that. I would love to go back there. And then I'd say, well, imagine if they sent you their new spring menu in email. Might that have inspired you to go back? And the light bulb goes off. Yes, I love them. Yes, I'm a repeat customer. No, I wasn't thinking about them 5 minutes ago. And now I see their email and I am. And so when you say, hey, guys, then that 80-20 rule, you can get more of that 80. And by the way, you can get it for pennies versus the hundreds to thousands of dollars you're spending on marketing trying to grow the 20%. So that was concept number one, more repeat business. And then concept number two was, and no, by the way, let's break down that 20% for a minute. How much do you think is word of mouth from your existing customers? And they're like, oh, I don't know, half of my new customers? And I'm like, well, now we are at 90% of your business being driven by people who already know you. And you're spending all your marketing time thinking about the last 10%. It's a big idea. It's simple when you say it. It takes a little bit of explanation. And that's why I wrote the book Engagement Marketing, was just to get that simple idea across. I still meet small businesses for whom that is an aha moment.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I hope your audience is listening and having an aha moment. Right? Because the big knock on email marketing was it doesn't get me new customers. I already have, I have to have their email. And you're right. It doesn't. It just drives more, but it gets you more business. And isn't really that what you're after? More revenue? If you can get it less expensively, hallelujah.
Yeah. I always kind of say too that it allows you to have the footing with which to do the other things that you want to do, right? Because you're bringing in the revenue, right? So you're not like, oh my God, what am I going to do? You're like, okay, what can I do, right? Now that you have this, it's just a simple shift.
Now that I know my current customer base is going to bring me,
Yeah.
this much business, I know how much I can afford to spend to try to grow the business. And so getting that steady business is really the heart of success for a small business. And anyway, so we're back to the point you made, which is, why did you start doing education? The answer was because we needed first to convince people to do email marketing, and why to bother talking to your existing customers. And then we had to teach them how to do the email marketing because they hadn't done that yet. And so everything I said just took me, 3 or 4 minutes to get across. We weren't going to do that in a pay-per-click ad.
Yeah.
Doesn't work, right? We needed a place where we had some time to lay these foundational concepts out. They aren't hard. They aren't even brilliant, but they aren't often talked about. And so that's how we started saying, well, gosh, that means we need 20 minutes. We need an hour. Maybe we can do webinars. Maybe we can do seminars. And that's where we slowly evolved to, partnering with chambers and being out in community doing in-person seminars. And now there's just much, there's podcasts and, all sorts of other mechanisms to do it. But at the time, those were the tools available to tell a story that was a little longer.
To the point of the simplicity piece of it too, it's really interesting how because of its simplicity, it gets dismissed a little bit sometimes, right? Until you can lay it out and be like, but why wouldn't you do this, right? You're like, oh, okay. But is it really that easy? Yes. The trouble comes with, okay, like, how do I actually like apply? To your point, like, okay, now how do I actually do it, right? From a technical standpoint, or what do I got to put in the email? What do I got to say? And like those types of things. But
And if I haven't started yet, I have to build my email list.
of course, right?
So
Yeah.
I have to learn how to ask for emails, and that's a little uncomfortable and all that. Although we've all gotten much better, much. It's now more of a common expectation, and people understand.
Mainstream type of idea, right?
Yeah. At the time, we literally had to teach people how to have a nice conversation and ask for an email and all this stuff. Yeah, just really, really early market stuff.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you this. I mean, to this day, I still talk about like the engagement marketing cycle in presentations, just to give people look, this is ultimately what you're trying to do, and this is how it works. So if you understand that, like, now just use these tools to feed into this, right? And so it's like, oh yeah, okay.
I have literally done the engagement marketing circle and then the cycle in every boardroom I'm in.
Yeah.
Because ultimately, you don't get that repeat business. You don't get that word of mouth if you haven't started with a wow experience. And, I think we lived this ourselves. So at our viral peak at Constant Contact, we estimated that for every customer we paid to acquire, we got 1.9 word of mouth referrals. That's insane. It slowed down as there were more competitors and more noise in the market, et cetera. But at the beginning, we lived that ourselves. Our revenue came from repeat business and word of mouth. So we were living our own proof point. We were our own living, walking, talking proof point of the idea that the first marketing you should do is repeat sales and word of mouth. If you have a leaky bucket, don't spend a lot of money on acquisition marketing. You have to close up the leaks in your bucket before you do that.
That's a great point too. That's one of the things, like, here's how to think about it. Here are the tools we're going to focus on. And then once you've got this piece figured out, then you can add some paid stuff to it, because you've got something that will work and support it, right? And oftentimes people, even today, try to jump to I'm going to pay. And then you've got nothing to back that up, right? You're just kind of throwing money away a little bit, right? So,
and I still see people do things where they don't capture contact information. They pay, they get an audience, and they let them walk away without any call to action to capture contact information so they can stay in touch. So if they want to see them again, they're going to have to pay again.
Right? Right. Obviously, through these different phases that Constant Contact has gone through and getting to the growth that it got to, can you highlight maybe what some of the roadblocks or the biggest challenges kind of you hit along the way, and then what helped you kind of overcome them at those particular moments?
So, clearly we had a variety of different roadblocks. Certainly, getting venture capital was a major roadblock, probably not the topic of this podcast. So I'll just kind of push that one aside. Figuring out our reach to market was a big roadblock, right? And we kept hitting, we would get a step function of growth, and then we would hit a plateau, and then we'd get another step function, and then we'd hit a plateau. And every time we asked ourselves, will we ever find more growth? Right? It was just like we would always have this existential dread about our ability to continue to grow. Then the other thing I would say, and was just always evolving the team to match the moment, right? Because, when you're small and everybody does everything, it's great. And then you have to have functions, and then some people scale and some people don't. And so there was always kind of team growth challenges. And then there were a couple of, I will just call existential threats to the business. One was the advent of spam. Sounds ridiculous now, but when we started the business, there was no spam. The only people who sent emails were sincere.
Yep.
And we had no spam prevention. And the email providers had no spam filtering. And then spam happened. And bad actors entered our market quickly and at volumes that were almost indescribably breathtaking. And we ended up with threats from both the legal and regulatory side. So the government was going to make, at one point, there was draft legislation in Congress that would have made mass emails illegal for everybody. And the second was that the people receiving the emails, the Yahoo Mail, Gmail, etc., were starting to block all mass email. So if our emails can't get through, we're out of business. And if the government makes it illegal, we're out of business. And suddenly we were immersed in we literally, me and two other CEOs in like a month, founded an industry coalition where we could, go together to both these, internet service providers and to Washington and make the case for good email.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was strange bedfellows because it was all competitors.
Sure. Yeah.
So it's really interesting. I had never done anything like it before. That was quite an undertaking. And that was literally a threat to the business model that we would not have overcome if we hadn't been able to do that.
Yeah. It's interesting because you kind of take these things for granted, particularly now, right? Because everything just kind of happens, right? But I mean, we've had on the show, Tara Nathanson, who, industry relations, right? Making sure that we have those close connections and continuing those conversations with the Yahoos and the Gmails, right? All that stuff, and just other folks in the industry so that the industry survives, right? And can still be a viable tool, again, for the audience that we serve here, right? In small businesses, right? Because think about if that wasn't, I mean, I can't even imagine if that wasn't an option for, you'd be in this place where you're just dumping tons of money, I guess. And then, I mean, we can have conversations about social, and maybe that will lead me to this next question, right? Because I mean, I think it's interesting to me, like, what we're seeing now is that people are over-indexing on social, right? And I'm often saying, like, just think if you spent, just a quarter of the time you're spending on social and you flip that to email, what that could do for your business, right? In many instances, right?
That's right.
So obviously the core was email. Why did you start to expand beyond email? What, like, were you hearing things from customers or just seeing where the industry was going? Like, what led you there?
Well, we had always said, our mission was, to help literally, change the success model for small business.
Yeah.
Those words probably sound familiar, but I must have said it 1,000 times. So we were always in conversations about where else are you having troubles? What else do you need help with? And there were just emerged these natural adjacencies. And some of it was just like observing what people were using our email marketing for, right? They were sending event announcements and they wanted to attach an RSVP, or they wanted to have a landing page that described the event in more detail. They were sending out surveys. They were doing things through the email that had another step. And if we could do that step for them, that was a natural extension. So it really just became about building a more complete solution. And then social was also just a real natural extension to how small businesses reach, we wanted to be their marketing partner. And this was just the kind of complete suite of marketing that they were looking at.
Yeah. It made a lot of sense to me too, like just thinking like, okay, yeah, what are the avenues or the channels that you have with which to stay connected to these people that are these audiences, whatever we want to call them, that are so important to your business, right? And it's like, oh yeah, these are all the different ways that you can do that. So it makes complete sense to me there. You talked about team growth can be a challenge. And I think any business growing, of course, that is a challenge. Culture is often something that's hard to maintain during that growth, of course. I guess so. Two questions. Why is culture so important to you? And I will say, as someone who has lived it and is still here, again, thank you for staying firm on that, because it's great to work with the people that I work with on a day-to-day basis. But why is it important to you, and how do you keep that intact?
So there are a couple things I'll focus on. I won't name names, but I will say in organizations past.
No, we want the name. No, I'm kidding.
No, I experienced a lot of cross-functional dysfunction.
Mm-hmm.
And saw how inherently wasteful that was. I was at a company in a marketing role, and we were redoing all of the sales materials, right? We were like doing a new sales methodology and a new set of materials, and the head of sales wasn't a good team player. And so after we would go to each region and do the training, he would call the regional manager and tell him to tell the guys to throw the stuff out. Then the regional manager would call me and say, "What should we do?" Like what? Well, I just was determined that we were all going to row together. Like, look, if he didn't think that was the right methodology, we should have had that conversation long before we were in market training his team. It's okay to disagree. In fact, disagreement comes up with better solutions. But you want to disagree early
Right.
and
Yeah.
respectfully.
Yeah. Of
Right.
course. Yeah.
And so it was really important to me. One of the cultural norms that maybe wasn't as visible down in the organization, but created cohesion down in the organization was alignment at the executive team. And so we learned how to be good peers to each other. And this is where the giving and receiving the feedback was important. Like we learned that, we got to the point where if someone did something that annoyed you, you actually said it in a nice way. But we got to this point where we were just great at working together and that we knew each other and each other's weaknesses well enough that we would actually ask for help. You remember that? This is long before the vulnerability phrase, right? But we were probably doing that. We were
Sure, yeah.
practicing vulnerability. We were asking for help. So I think culture is really important because without that kind of cohesive alignment, it starts with mission, right? Culture starts with mission. You can't get aligned if you aren't agreeing what the point of the whole thing is.
Right. Yeah.
So mission at the top, and then tight alignment on priorities. There will always be more to do in a company than you have time to do. So you've got to pick the 3 most important things. And if your list of the most important things for me to do in the next quarter is 10, it's too long. Get to the top 3 and get alignment from your top team on what those top 3 are. And if you get through them, then you can go to the 4th, 5th, and 6th. It's okay to have a running list. But if you try to do 10 at once, you get nothing done. And you don't line up enough resources to get to escape velocity on whatever it is you're trying to fix. So these things from my past said, I just don't, it's like the way we parent. We parent the way we
Yeah.
We don't want to do what our parents did that we didn't like.
We know we don't want to be like that. Yeah, exactly.
We know we don't want to be like that. So I brought a lot of, I know we don't want to be like that.
Yeah.
I don't want to be that CEO. And that really influenced the culture. That was part of the no jerks. I don't know if you swear in your show. We used a stronger word inside. I just didn't want to work with people I didn't enjoy being around.
Yeah.
Easy peasy, right? But the more you did that, the more, you became a magnet for good people who wanted to work hard, right? I mean, people used to say, oh, this is all touchy-feely and, you don't want to win. It was like, have you seen my numbers?
I know.
I want to win. So none of that was actually about not playing hard.
Yeah, of
and
course.
not playing
Right.
to win.
Yeah.
It was about playing hard and playing to win as a team. You can do a bunch of
Yep. And doing it with people that you enjoy doing it with.
right. You can do a bunch of sports metaphors here, like that. That really worked, right?
It's more meaningful at that point, right? Yeah.
Often
yeah.
the best teams don't necessarily have all of the best players, but they work together as a team.
Yeah. And yeah, to your point of like attracting those people, because I'm like, yeah, I don't know if it was more like, obviously, yes, there were things that I learned in the process of like, oh, this is what that looks like. But then I'm also like, well, I'm inclined to do that as well. But I mean, I even think of, teams that I've led at Constant Contact. It's always been like, look, here's the vision, here's the mission, here's what we're trying to do, being very clear about that. But then giving people or having people feel comfortable enough to say like what they're feeling and how they're thinking about it so that you can be on the same page. I think the biggest mistake and what would drive me crazy if you're shaking your head, yes, but then you leave this room and you're going, no, well, we can't fix this. Like we're never going to get to where we need to go. So we have to be honest with each other in the room, right? In order to move forward. Right.
Yeah. Well, and so I came up with a lot of these concepts on my own, but then I read a book. I always like to give people a book recommendation.
There we go.
That was the book that wrote down everything I was already thinking. And it's called The Advantage. And it's all about using culture as, the competitive advantage. And one of the things it says is, if you didn't agree in the argument and you lost, you have to leave the room and be fully supportive. And so that was a key operating principle for us. If you left the room and then said, we're doing this, but I don't agree, like you didn't stay in constant contact. And we were not afraid to fire on culture. Happened all the time. It happened all the time. By the way, we also then that led to living back to this repeat business word of mouth thing. Like 40% of our new hires were referrals.
Yeah. Yeah.
People loved working there enough that they brought in the best people that they worked with in the past. And they were going to be held accountable to the quality of the people they brought in. So they didn't bring in the dud. So it just success begat success.
Yeah, for sure. You've done a great job, obviously, kind of bringing this together. And then, I don't know how much we need to go in this, but just to understand kind of like the different phases within Constant Contact and doing something, again, that people thought you weren't going to be able to do just mathematically, it wasn't going to work, right? I know you talk about this low slung SaaS ramp of death, right? Maybe we talk a little bit about that, but like, how did you navigate that period of time? And then when did the things start to really click from a growth perspective?
Yeah, it's interesting. One of the problems with the business model was just, this, like, again, I'll use round numbers. We're charging $30 a month.
Yep.
You need a lot of customers to pay anybody.
Yeah.
Right? 1,000 customers. Woo-hoo. Right? That's $30,000 a month. That pays 3 humans. Right? Like that's just not, So we knew we needed to get to tens of thousands. And that's why we had to raise venture capital. That's just, if I could do it again, I'd love to find a way to bootstrap and not need the venture money. I just don't think for this model that was going to be possible. Particularly at that time because there was no Amazon, AWS. You had to buy servers and put them in hosting. And there just was a minimum expense to run a SaaS business. So I just don't think it was possible to do without venture. So how did I navigate that? It was interesting. People ask why it was, I like to say it was an overnight success that only took 10 years to happen. And I did those first, and it really was 99, I would say, to 2004. It was 5 really rough years. And that was very much a mission-driven team that kept finding, we were getting lots of proof points that what we were doing was working for our customers. We got our energy from our customers. We would talk to customers and they'd be like, oh my God, you've changed my business, right? And we used to read these emails we'd get at company meetings, right? I was stuck in a dead-end corporate job I thought I would never get out of. And then I found Constant Contact, and now my side hustle is a full-time business. You saved my life. Like, we'd read these, there would be letter after letter that said, we know we're doing the right thing. We've got to figure it out. And honestly, we were stubborn as hell. We were not giving up, right? This was a very committed early team, and we were just not gonna fail. And so I think it was really just a lot of persistence and stick-to-itness. What they say, grit, all the stuff you need to be a founder, the stuff you need to be a small business, right? There's got to be you just got to know in your heart that what you're doing is right. And it doesn't mean you don't listen to the critics. It doesn't mean you don't learn from mistakes. All of that has to come in. But in the end, you have to know what your North Star is and what your core is and what you believe in. And that was enough to get us to the growth. And then we hit a tipping point and things started to grow really fast. And it was a combination of stuff we did in the evolution of the market and the art of the possible that I talked about earlier. Product became radically easier to use when you could do a drag and drop interface. Like that changed a lot of things. Everybody now had an email. And then cell phones changed there was another round of change, and then social was another round. I mean, there were multiple rounds of change. We navigated. Some we were ahead, some we were behind, some we were just right. Never get it perfect.
Obviously, you move on from CEO of Constant Contact. What are you doing with your time? What are you focusing on next? What's important to you? What keeps you engaged?
So having left, right, the two things I missed most of all was mission and team. Not shocking. I get that today as the board chair of an organization called Entrepreneurship for All. We go into economically challenged communities and help underrepresented entrepreneurs create and grow small business. So it's right up my alley. Everyone who's listening understands the power of owning a small business to change your economic outlook, right? To give you financial freedom, to create a legacy, a wealth legacy to pass on to your children, right? Black business owners have 10 times the wealth of black non-business owners, right? Small business is one of the powerful levers in changing the income inequality equation in our country, which is very real. And so I've found a way to take my love of small business and my desire to give back and bring it, and with an existing organization. I didn't start E for All. It had already existed. But I got involved first as a mentor, then as a board member, now as board chair, and now we're building a national scaling plan. It is the main focus of my time and energy now. And then I also spend time working with other software and service companies that focus on small businesses as a board member. And that's a desire to take all the lessons I learned in Constant Contact and not have them, die with me, right? And so it is amazing how similar the paths are. Slightly different markets, definitely different teams, but the lessons learned are the lessons learned. And I can be really valuable as a coach mentor to CEOs who are following that path, and I enjoy it.
I'm often surprised at how much of everything that was old is new again, right? In many ways, and how much of this is still the same. I mean, we've talked about this idea of just building those customer relationships, staying focused on repeat business and your existing customers and all of that. From your perspective, where should businesses be focusing today to really think about creating something that's sustainable and allows them to grow?
It goes back to these fundamentals, which is, who is your customer? Do you really understand how their lives are evolving and how their challenges are evolving, particularly as it relates to whatever you do for them, right? You don't have to worry about things that are totally disconnected from your space, but in your space, are you staying close? Because when you started your business, I'll just say it was a decade ago, you probably did a lot of talking to customers, but now that you're running the business, you might be a little further away and everything changes. Right? I'm just stopped watching my son and then watching kind of even younger people. The way they consume the world is different. It's different. The way they get their information is different, right? The way they see the world is different. And so if you are not staying up with an evolving, changing customer demographic, that's going to be a problem eventually. And so biggest advice is always stay close to your customer and notice how whatever they do that is related to you is changing, and then try to get ahead of it. And whether that's technological or just habits, right? Our tastes change all the time, right? I watch e-commerce brands come and go. It's like, oh, that was the taste of the month and now it's gone, right? Like tastes change, trends change. And so don't stay the same. You have to stay relevant or you become a dinosaur.
Well, friend, let's recap some items from that discussion. Number 1, prioritize repeat business and word of mouth. Gail's philosophy for Constant Contact customers was simple. Don't overlook the customers you already have. She shared how the majority of small business revenue comes from people who already know you, and that by intentionally reaching out and reminding them to come back, you drive more sales for pennies on the dollar. So before you go chasing new customers, map out how you're currently engaging your existing customers. Are you consistently reminding them of new offers, updates, or just saying thanks? If not, start with a simple regular email campaign focused on re-engagement. Number 2, stay close to your customers always. Throughout her career, Gail emphasized the importance of understanding your customers' evolving needs, whether it was talking to small business owners at conferences or iterating the Constant Contact product based on real feedback. She made it a habit to stay in the trenches. Now, to me, this is the simple secret to success for businesses of any size. Set up regular check-ins through surveys, interviews, or even casual conversations to get real feedback from your audience. Use those insights to guide your marketing, content, and product or service decisions. And number 3, resilience is a team sport. Gail shared that building a great company culture wasn't just about being nice. It was about creating a team that could work through disagreements, adapt together, and stay focused on the mission. She saw that mission-driven culture led to better alignment and ultimately business success. So as your business grows or you try to grow your business to the next stages, take a look at how your team communicates and collaborates. Are you clear on your mission and top priorities? If not, get everyone together and realign and clarify what matters most for the business to focus on next to reach your goals. So here's your action item for today. Start building stronger customer relationships today. Look, don't overthink it. Use your Constant Contact account to reach out to your existing customers, remind them why they chose you, and invite them back. Even a single email can spark repeat business and keep your brand top of mind. If you're not sure where to start, I'll include some educational resources for you in the show notes. I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Be a Marketer podcast. Please take a moment to leave us a review. Just go to ratethispodcast.com/BAM. Your honest feedback will help other small business marketers like yourself find the show. That's ratethispodcast.com/BAM. Well, friend, I hope you enjoy the rest of your day and continued success to you and your business.